Hello everyone, I hope you had a great summer break. I am so excited to welcome you all to this second season of your podcast. You have arrived just in time to embark on this first Sankofa flight with me, which is now leaving the presidential palace of Cotonou in Benin. I had the great honor of having lunch with His Excellency, the President of Benin, Mr. Patrice Talon, aka the most fashionable president in Africa. Our discussions were mainly around the 26 Benin cultural objects that France has decided to return to Benin. A return that surprisingly the Benin government has decided to delay for 2 more years, claiming that the structures to accommodate those objects are not ready yet. Frankly, I'm very sad about this news. But go ahead guys, buckle your belt and let's go back together in time in the footsteps of these objects that symbolize a time when Africans still valued their own culture and had their own religions. That was before those were destroyed and erased by invaders from Europe who wanted to redesign a continent that was clearly too complex for them to understand.
African History Daily by my daddy.
With His Excellency, we went back to November the 4th, 1892, to the Kingdom of Abomey, known for its excellent organization, opulent palaces, and solid army that had a special force consisting solely of amazing women called the Amazons. On this day, the royal palace is finally invaded by French soldiers, who until this point had been defeated by the dreaded King of Abomey, King Béanzin. General Alfred Dodds of French-Senegalese origin finally wins the war, but he is so disappointed, dissatisfied at not having captured King Béanzin, who vanished into the forest, escaping surrender. The general, however, finds other trophies to console himself, anthropomorphic statuettes which he can barely understand, but he still takes them to France together with the royal thrones and symbols, the sacred doors of the palace. These objects, seen as fetishes and symbols of a devil's religion, became the property of the Museum of Quai Branly in Paris. We went further back in time with the president to examine this practice of forcibly stripping the people of their historical and cultural creations. French Emperor Napoleon, for example, had massively indulged in this activity, filling a museum to his glory, the Louvre Museum, then renamed Napoleon Museum. His museum director, a guy called Dominique Vivant-Denon, systematically robbed all the countries invaded by Napoleon. Hundreds of workpieces were stolen and taken from Italy, Germany, even Russia. The most magnificent sculptures of all the Mediterranean theatre, the statue of the Athena goddess from Napoli, for example, and many others made their ways to Paris. In just a few years' time, they had accumulated the largest collection of art in the whole world. Dominique Denon shamelessly looted his neighbors so much that they nicknamed him the Predator, or an auctioneer of Europe arts. Then came 1815 and the second collapse of the French Empire, and with it, the Day of Restitution. Only 2 weeks after the defeat of Waterloo, almost all the 5,000 stolen works headed back to their respective homes, starting with the British ones led by the Duke of Wellington. Only 100 or so remain today in the Louvre Museum. This looting by Napoleon was for the deliberate purpose of having a prized collection of artwork in the same museum. However, it's important to differentiate that from what happened a few decades later in Africa for several reasons. First reason, the scale of this methodical plunder was unprecedented and lasted a much longer period. Secondly, the number of countries involved in the looting and the vast categories of persons involved, such as armies, missionaries, the so-called ethnologists, anthropologists, etc. And third, the purpose of this plundering was radically different, since it aimed at erasing the existing traditions, cults and cultures, and replace them with European beliefs and gods. This is why most places of worship were burned and ransacked, and objects carried abroad in hundreds from various countries. The record of the highest number of stolen objects is certainly held by Belgium, with allegedly more than 400,000 objects looted in Democratic Republic of Congo, then called Belgian Congo, Rwanda and Burundi. Oh no, the Sankofa has flown already for 5 minutes and means an emergency landing in Paris. But don't worry, everything is gonna be fine. My African cliché of the day is a man, a French art critic named Didier Rykner, who founded the Art Tribune. This is what he said on French TV.
They became works of art in museums because Europeans said it's art. You know, it's not from Africa. It was not art. It was meant to disappear.
What audacity, what condescendence, and above all, what ignorance. So Africans only became aware of their own creativity only after the colonizers stole it. What about paying a surprise Sankofa tour to this so-called art critic? Let's get off a plane and explain to him that indeed those stolen works have never been, they are not, and they will never be art objects made for the windows of Quai Branly Museum, simply because most of them were made for worship. They are sacred objects that should have never left the country.